Chapter 51. The people on the lotus were stunned. She was the one who killed the other two supremacies. They took a closer look at the water mirror. Indeed, this woman was standing beside I Ching in the image before Qing Yin's death. They looked at her warily. More importantly, they could not detect her cultivation level. Fellow Taoist, don't spout nonsense. The Thousand Leaves vegetation spirit is the Xian Yuan family's treasure. Since when did it become yours? Are you sure it belongs to your family? Everyone in the Upper Azure world knows. Then, Shuning narrowed her eyes. Call out to it, and see if it responds. The traveling immortal's chest tightened. What the hell? Ridiculous. The vegetation spirit is born from the spirit chi of heaven and earth. Although it is sentient, it has always been arrogant. Why would it respond so casually? Even its owner can't. If you don't call out, I'll call out. Before he could finish, Shuning suddenly turned around and shouted, Radish, come out for a moment. Gee! Just as she finished speaking, a beam of white light shot out from under Lonmun's feet. In a flash, it appeared in front of Shuning. It was white and chubby, with long green leaves on its head. Between two of the leaves, there was a dandelion that it was holding up with all its might. G. Get away from me. The dandelion was shedding its feathers. Gee! The radish immediately became listless. Thousand Leaves vegetation spirit. The people on the lotus exclaimed in unison. They looked at the chubby spirit plant on the ground in disbelief. It really was the Thousand Leaves vegetation spirit, and it looked like it was fully sentient. Great! Who would have thought that the mystic realm would really have something like this? Radish! Shuning glanced at the vegetation spirit on the ground and pointed at the people opposite her. I heard that you're from their family. The radish paused and looked in the direction she was pointing. Then, it let out a loud and clear sound. Pooey. There are always bitches who covet my body. Everyone fell silent for a few seconds. Who do you think this radish belongs to? Shuning looked at the crowd. Everyone's expressions turned complicated. The Xian Yuan family knew the truth best. Initially, they were here to vent their anger on the Black Heaven sect. They did not expect to find the Thousand Leaves vegetation spirit in a mystic realm, but who would have thought that it would actually be here? Just what did you do to the Thousand Leaves vegetation spirit? The traveling immortal rolled his eyes and shouted, This is Xuanyuan's Thousand Leaves vegetation spirit. You must have used some kind of sorcery on it to make it obey you. He stared at the spirit grass on the ground. It would have been better if he hadn't seen it, but now that he had, even if he had to snatch it, he couldn't let this treasure slip away from his eyes. Who said it recognized a master? Shuning picked up the carrot from the ground and turned around. Indeed, there were no signs of a contract on its snow-white body. It didn't acknowledge him as its master. Everyone's eyes widened in disbelief. Was this person an idiot? What kind of treasure wouldn't recognize its owner after obtaining it? Everyone's faces darkened even more. They could no longer say that the treasure belonged to them. Who would believe that an item that hadn't acknowledged an owner was the Xian Yuan family's heirloom? At that moment, the arrogant crowd's faces turned green and black. It was especially interesting. They all felt as if they had shot themselves in the foot. You people are so boring. Shuning let out a long sigh. If only they had the time to find trouble, they should have eaten something good. She turned back to look at the Black Heaven sect people behind her. Her gaze swept across them without stopping. She turned back to I Ching and said, Chef, I'm sick of the food here. Why don't we go somewhere else? Master. I Ching paused. He immediately understood what she meant. Gritting his teeth, he turned back to glare at the crowd. Was Master trying to divert the Xian Yuan family's attention to her so that she could solve the Black Heaven sex crisis? Why did this bunch of cowardly, ungrateful people have to do that? Yes, Master. I Ching clenched his fist by his side. He took a deep breath and turned to say, Sect Master Chiu, sorry for disturbing you these days. I Ching is an itinerant cultivator and cannot be bound by the rules of the sect. I would like to resign from my position as a guest elder. The path of immortality is uncertain. I hope that all of you can ascend to the immortal realm as soon as possible. With that said, He took out the disciple jade token that was given to him when he entered the sect and handed it over. I Ching. Lomun's eyes widened. What are you doing? Supremacy, farewell. Shi Qiu's hand trembled, but he still took it. He suddenly felt ashamed. The most innocent person in this matter was their own disciple, but for the sake of the sect, Shi Qiu, you? Lomun looked at Shi Qiu in disbelief. I Ching didn't care about leaving the sect. He had no feelings for the Black Heaven sect. He knew all too well what the other sects did. From a moment he saw the water mirror, he knew how the people of the Black Heaven sect would react. Although the Xin Yuan family had no reason to act up now, as long as the vegetation spear was around, as long as he and his master were still part of the Black Heaven sect, they would not let the Black Heaven sect off. The aristocratic families of the upper world had many ways to deal with the sects of the lower world without bloodshed. As time passed, there was no guarantee that these people would not resent them. They might as well leave. Master. I Ching ignored Lone Moon and walked back. Shining nodded, then looked up at the people on the lotus and said, I was the one who beat up your people and picked up Radish. If you're not happy, come and find me. This has nothing to do with others. With that said, she stepped onto I Ching's flying sword and flew into the distance. Wait, you! Lone Moon was about to step forward to stop them. Yang stepped forward and stopped him. Junior brother, they left for the sake of the sect. Don't let them down. Lone Moon clenched his fists. What sect? Shining did not care about such things. No matter how many traveling immortals the Xian Yuan family sent, what could they do to her? She purposely left with the 1,000 Leaves vegetation spirit just not to make things difficult for him. He was Supremacy Lone Moon of the Black Heaven sect. Senior brothers. Lone Moon took a deep breath and made up his mind. He cupped his fists towards Yu Yang and said, Lone Moon does not care about the sect, but I know what it means to be a friend. They entered the mystic realm because of me. Since the Black Heaven sect could not protect them, I cannot sit back and do nothing. Please forgive me. I cannot call myself a disciple of the Black Heaven sect anymore. What was the point of staying in a sect like this? Junior brother. Uncle Master. Everyone's expression changed, but he directly returned his jade token to Shi Qiu, turned around, and chased after them on his sword. You two stop right there. Seeing that they had left with the 1,000 Leaves vegetation spirit, the people of the Xian Yuan family no longer wanted to attack the Black Heaven sect. Since this is a misunderstanding, we will not trouble you any further. The traveling immortals on the lotus waved their hands, and the entire lotus flew away from the main peak. The sky twisted and a passageway appeared. The huge lotus flew towards the entrance, but the 5 traveling immortals sitting in the middle of the lotus suddenly disappeared. Chapter 52. After I Ching left the Black Heaven sect, he headed northwest. Perhaps it was because he was holding back his anger, but he flew quickly and hurriedly. He only turned back after he left the Black Sea. Master, it'll take us another 4 hours to get to the nearest market, he suggested. He looked in front of him and suggested, It's getting late. Why don't we rest here for a while and continue on our way after Master has lunch? All right. Shining rubbed her tummy. I was waiting for you to say that. I Ching immediately turned his spirit sword around and flew down to an empty space. He conjured a wind elemental spell to clear the area. Master, wait a moment. It'll be ready soon. As he started a fire, he took out the spirit beast meat from his storage bag. This is still within the Black Heaven sect's territory. It's hard for spirit beasts to appear here. However, there's a transportation array at the market in the east. Once we pass through it, we'll be able to return to the thatched cottage in 3 days. Huh? Thatched cottage? What cottage? Shining paused. The cottage that Master used to live in. I Ching paused. Master, aren't you going back? Shining suddenly thought of the baskets full of radishes. Her mouth twitched. She patted his shoulder and said, That's Chef, actually. She was just about to dismiss his idea of going home to eat radishes when suddenly a suppressive force swept toward the two of them. A spirit wind blew, causing leaves to fall from the sky. 5 figures in green and white descended from the sky and landed in front of the two of them. The two of you left so quickly. It took us a while to find you. One of them stepped forward and smiled. People from a Xin Yuan family. I Ching's expression darkened. He stood up abruptly. These were the 5 traveling immortals on the lotus seat. He was about to summon his spirit sword when Shuning pushed him back down. Shuning pressed him back down. Go roast your meat. Yes, master. I Ching had no choice but to squat down again. He could not help but glare at the 5 of them. Although he had guessed that they would come to snatch the 1,000 leaves vegetation spirit, he did not think that they would come so quickly. Could they not wait any longer? He did not think that the aristocratic families of the upper world would have such ugly manners. Fellow Taoists, sorry to disturb you. The middle-aged traveling immortal stepped forward and smiled politely at Shining, but the greed in his eyes seemed to be overflowing. Please forgive us for following you without permission. We really had no other choice. We have a presumptuous request that we hope fellow Taoist can fulfill. Without waiting for Shining to ask, he took the initiative to explain, my Xin Yuan family has always produced many alchemy cultivators. In the entire 3 Azure Realms, I'm afraid you won't be able to find a stronger alchemy cultivator than my family. The family head is even a 10-stage alchemy master. The 1,000 leaves vegetation spirit that you obtained is a sacred pill refinement treasure. It is only useful for pill refinement cultivators and is completely useless to other cultivators. I don't think you're an alchemist, so why don't you give it to my Xin Yuan family and make the best use of it? Shining bent down and picked up a certain leg pendant that had been wrapped around her foot ever since she left Black Heaven's sect. You mean this one? Gee, the radish pendant immediately waved its leaves. Everyone's eyes lit up. The middle-aged traveling immortal took a few steps forward and said excitedly, that's right. You want it? Shining tilted her head. The traveling immortal's expression changed. His smile deepened as he said, fellow Taoist, this 1,000 leaves vegetation spirit is quite intelligent. If you take good care of it, it might be able to take human form in no time. Forgive me for being blunt, but other than my Xin Yuan family, I'm afraid no one in this world can take care of such a treasure. Fellow Taoist, you're all alone now. You don't belong to any sect. Why do you want to offend an aristocratic family? Oh, and then, Shining still looked nonchalant. The traveling immortal's face darkened. Someone beside him could not help but say, why do you have to waste so much time talking to her? Anyway, this 1,000 leaves vegetation spirit cannot fall into the hands of anyone other than the Xin Yuan family. She has to give it to you, even if she doesn't want to. With that said, he flew up and raised his sword to stab her. In an instant, the huge sword chi brought with it a huge gust of wind. Wherever it passed, the grass and trees flew, and the spirit chi was overwhelming. His speed was extremely fast. In a flash, he was already in front of Shining. The long sword was about to sink into her head. Shining suddenly raised her hand. There was a loud clanging sound. The sword in the traveling immortal's hand broke into pieces. It broke into pieces in Shun Ying's palm, along with the sword hilt. She clenched her hand and instantly grabbed his fist that was still holding the sword. The gust of wind brought by the spirit chi immediately stopped. But Shun Ying did not even move a corner of her robe. Huh? You? How is this possible? She had broken his 9th-grade spirit sword so easily. Before he could figure out, Shun Ying suddenly sighed. She shook the radish in her other hand, which had been secretly wrapping a leaf around her wrist. Actually, I'm not interested in such vegetables. If you had told me nicely, I would have given it to you. But she narrowed her eyes and turned to look at the people in front of her. Giving it to me is one thing, but if you want to snatch it from me, I won't be happy. As she spoke, she suddenly clenched her fist. Ah, a strange cry pierced through the air. By the time Lone Moon caught up with the 2 of them, it was already noon. After leaving Black Heaven's sect, he followed I Ching's aura all the way here. He flew very quickly. There were many emotions in his heart. Touched, guilty, worried, all kinds of emotions. All he wanted was to catch up with the 2 of them as soon as possible. Until he saw a wisp of green smoke not far away. He finally found traces of the 2 of them. Then, he saw the 5 traveling immortals lying on the side like a human pyramid. Holy shit! His flying sword was halfway down. He lost his balance and almost fell. Weren't they the 5 traveling immortals from the Xian Yuan family? Hey, Father Niao. Shun Ying waved her greasy hand at him. She habitually gave him some space. It's time for lunch. Do you want to join us? She pointed at Yi Qing, who was feeling the meat. He returned a look of disdain to Lone Moon. Shameless, you still want to steal my skills. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He turned to look at the arhats on the ground. What are they doing? Oh, they're robbing. Shun Ying casually explained. Robbing? Lone Moon immediately guessed what was going on. It must be because of the 1,000 leaves vegetation spirit. But how long had it been? 5 traveling immortals were lying on the ground just like that. And they looked so pitiful. What exactly did you do? Don't worry, they won't die. They just fainted. Seeing that Lone Moon had been staring at those people, Shun Ying kindly explained. She shook her head and said, young middle-aged people these days, their bodies are too weak. They cannot withstand falling at all. They were not even as strong as small animals. Lone Moon, want a piece? Shun Ying directly handed a piece of meat to him. Lone Moon hesitated. He took it and sat beside her as usual. Thinking about what happened before, he felt like something was stuck in his heart. He wanted to say something, but he didn't know where to start. After finishing the piece of meat, he said in a low voice, I've left Black Heaven's sect. Oh, just now? I'm sorry. Shun Ying paused. She turned to look at him, her expression confused. What? I was the one who invited you into the ancient mystic realm. Lone Moon took a deep breath and said seriously to the two of them, it wasn't your fault that the Xian Yuan family came to Black Heaven's sect, but at the end of the day, I implicated you. Chapter 54. Actually, it's very simple. I'm not happy that your family would go out and rob other people's things, Shun Ying said seriously. Shun Ying said seriously, I heard that you're the head of a vegetarian family. Let me remind you, if your family members do bad things, you still have to educate them. What was a vegetarian family? He was the head of the family, not a parent. What was with the way she was talking to the traveling immortals? I'll come back to tell you all about it. She plucked a radish from her leg. Although it's a radish, it has an owner. No matter how much you like eating vegetarian food, I won't give it to you. It's useless even if you snatch it. 1,000 leaves vegetation spirit. The family head's swollen eyes opened a slit. He suddenly understood why the 5 uncles did not return. Oh my God, this 1,000 leaves vegetation spirit was hers. That was terrifying. I can't be bothered to deal with you. So I just want to tell you seriously that if anyone from the Xian Yuan family dares to disturb my meals, I will beat you up. You've already beaten me up. Do you all understand? Shun Ying raised her voice. The few people on the ground shrunk back and nodded. Traveling Immortal 1. Yes, Great Immortal, we understand. Great Immortal. Traveling Immortal 2. We will reflect on our mistakes. Great Immortal. Traveling Immortal 3. Great Immortal's words, I will remember them by heart. Traveling Immortal 4. Listening to Great Immortal's words is better than reading 100 years of books. Traveling Immortal 5. No one will disturb Great Immortal's cultivation again. I will fight anyone who disturbs you. Head of a Xian Yuan family. Did his traveling immortal become stupid? What about you? Shun Ying suddenly turned to look at him, her murderous intent overflowing. His whole body trembled, the word death rising in his mind. Cold sweat poured down his back. He squeezed out a few words with all his might. Great Immortal. It was not that he did not want to reply, but that his head was really swollen to the point that he could not speak. Ouch, it hurts. Shun Ying nodded, satisfied. She patted her butt and got down from the chair. That's all, meeting adjourned. After saying that, he walked to the door and was about to go out. G. Radish suddenly jumped down and bounced into the hall. What? Shun Ying looked confused. You want to be the radish of the vegetable family? G. The radish jumped around anxiously. It looked into the hall and then back at him. Suddenly, it jumped onto the high platform that she was sitting on earlier. It waved its leaves and reached into the wall behind the chair. After a while, it took out something and raised it towards her. G. The expressions of the 6 people changed instantly. Shining looked down, only to see a handful of dried leaves. Pickled vegetables? Gee, you want it? Gee. The radish nodded its leaves vigorously. Air. Shining frowned and turned to look at the person beside her. That vegetarian parent, can you? Yes. The family head, who had finally regained his ability to speak, nodded vigorously. It is the Xian Yuan family's fortune that great deity has taken a liking to us. Oh, thank you. Radish, come here. Gee. The radish jumped back. Shining took the dandelion off its head and handed it to the family head on the ground. This should be useful to you. Take it as an exchange. Radish, let's go. With that said, she walked out the door. Gee. The radish paused and looked at the person who walked out, then at the dandelion in the corpse's hand. Then it made a sound. Pooey. You got it easy. Then it hopped out, and as it hopped, it let out a long string of sounds. Gee. The Xian Yuan family head. He looked at the 1,000-leaves spirit flower in his hand, and then at the empty doorway. They left just like that? Uncles? I'm not dreaming, am I? Although a few of their bones were broken and they lost some of their cultivation, but they were still alive. Not a single one of them died. That person clearly had the chance to make the Xian Yuan family disappear from the Upper Azure world. Why did he let them go so easily? Is it true? One of the traveling immortals asked, still in a daze. But that stopped just now. He suddenly remembered the withered grass that the vegetation spirit had taken away. Family head, please don't mention this again. The traveling immortal reminded him anxiously. Family head, you know that our original 1,000-leaves vegetation spirit lost its sentience 1,000 years ago. Now even its body has withered and died. I don't think we can save it. That was why they were so anxious to find the next 1,000-leaves vegetation spirit. Great Immortal is already very kind to exchange this withered grass for more than 10,000-leaves spirit flowers. What's more, she spared everyone's lives. Apart from beating him up at the beginning, she had also slapped his face. She said she wanted to chat, and she really did. The 6 of them had complicated expressions on their faces. This person called Shunning, who exactly was she? No matter who she is, if you see her in the future, do not provoke her. Even her 2-sword cultivator subordinates, avoid her if you can. Everyone nodded in agreement. The Xian Yuan family could not afford another round of trouble. Something big had happened in the Upper Azure world recently. It was said that one of the 4 aristocratic families, the Xian Yuan family, had offended 2-sword cultivators in the lower realm. In the end, they were so angry that they chased them all the way to the upper realm and even killed their way to the Xian Yuan family. The Xian Yuan family sent out more than 10 soul formation cultivators, but none of them were a match for them. All of them were defeated. At that time, a few of the traveling immortal elders of the Xian Yuan family had not returned. The Xian Yuan family suffered heavy losses. Even the family head was seriously injured. After the 2-sword cultivators injured all the soul formation cultivators, they left. Although they did not kill anyone, the Xian Yuan family had lost all face. Sword cultivators could challenge people of a higher cultivation level than them, but it was rare. What's more, the other party was a soul formation sword cultivator. They had challenged more than 10 soul formation cultivators from one of the 4 aristocratic families the moment they came to the upper realm. It was obvious how powerful their sword skills were. Even if they encountered a traveling immortal, they might not be able to win. How could they not be shocked? Unfortunately, they had chosen the wrong target. The one who had been humiliated was one of the 4 aristocratic families, the Xian Yuan family. The entire Upper Azure world was waiting for a good show. When the traveling immortal elders of the Xian Yuan family returned, how would they get back at the 2 swordsmen? But for some reason, 3 months passed, and the Xian Yuan family did not make any moves. Moreover, ever since that day, the entire family acted differently. They started to keep a low profile. Even the disciples who went out to deliver elixirs were ordered not to cause any trouble. The Upper Azure world was dumbfounded. Could it be that the two sword cultivators were so powerful that even the traveling immortal elders of the aristocratic families did not dare to provoke them? Coincidentally, a few months ago, two traveling immortals of the Xian Yuan family had fallen in the Middle Azure world. The reason for this was hard to fathom. At that moment, all the cultivators in the Upper Azure world were excited. The names of the two sword cultivators from the lower realm became famous all over the streets and alleys, and in every immortal city. They became a daily topic of conversation among the cultivators. Fellow Taoist, have you heard of the sword cultivators I Ching and Lone Moon? That's right. They're the two who almost destroyed the entire Xian Yuan family. I heard that those two people, Shaning, who was sitting at the next table, after a while, I suddenly realized a serious problem. She stood up. Lone Moon hurriedly held the cup on the table. Hey, why did you suddenly stand up? Master, I Ching asked seriously. What's so strange about it? Shining frowned and looked at the two of them with a serious expression that she had never shown before. What's wrong? Lone Moon's heart sank. Aren't we here to eat? Don't you feel that? Her expression became even more serious. She said word by word. My reputation is a little too low. Lone Moon, I Ching, look, I was the one who beat up that parent, and I was the one who kidnapped those 5 traveling immortals. Chapter 55. Master, is the sense of presence that you speak of very important? I Ching asked seriously. Shining paused. Not really. She just felt a little aggrieved. Don't worry, Master. He stood up directly. I'll go and explain to them right now. The person who fought the Xian Yuan family that day was actually Master. We actually did not enter the back palace of the Xian Yuan family at all. With that said, he turned to go downstairs to explain to the people who were discussing. Come back here. Lone Moon hurriedly pulled him back, frowning. Can't you brainless fan calm down? Do you think people will believe you if you just say that? Besides, with Shun Ying's invisibility, even if people believed her, they would forget about her in the blink of an eye. Then, why don't I go to the Xian Yuan family and ask them to come out and explain? That way, everyone would believe him. Forget it. Lone Moon rolled his eyes. The Xian Yuan family has never mentioned Shining, and they insist that the traveling immortals of the family did not return on the day we went. Don't you understand? Wasn't it because they could not afford to lose face? The 5 strongest traveling immortals of the family were beaten up so badly that they looked like grandchildren. If the whole Upper Azure world knew about this, they would lose face. The 4 aristocratic families of the Upper Azure world look like they are on good terms, but in reality, they are fighting each other both openly and secretly. They did not say the whole truth because they wanted to protect themselves. Only brainless people would tell everyone that all the experts of the family were beaten up. I Ching frowned. No, I can't let people misunderstand, Master. All right, put away your fan logic. Your master can't be cured. He turned to glare at Shining. Control your brainless fan. Shining then turned back and said, Chef, let's talk after we eat. Yes, Master. I Ching then sat back down. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He had said so much, but he could not win against one sentence from her. For the 101st time, he regretted for the first time. Why did he follow these 2 idiots to the Upper Azure world and offend an aristocratic family in the heat of the moment? Was the future bleak? He sighed and glanced at a certain someone who was still eating her meal as if nothing had happened. Suddenly, he remembered something. Oh yes, Shining. When you were looking for their family head, apart from settling the matter of them fighting for the treasure, did anything else happen? He didn't want to stir up any more trouble. No. Shining tilted her head and suddenly thought of something. She looked up and took off the pendant on her leg. Does the radish and pickled vegetables count? Salty? Holy shit. Lone Moon jumped to his feet. This, with a look of disbelief on his face, he reached out to take the pickles between the radish's leaves to take a closer look, but the radish's claws were slapped away by its leaves. Gee, it can't be you. Lone Moon turned to look at Shining, then looked around and whispered, That's not very kind of you. All you had to do was beat them up to vent your anger. Why did you have to snatch the Xian Yuan family's 1,000 leaves vegetation spirit as well? He's the lifeblood of the Xian Yuan family. What did you do to the Xian Yuan family master? I wasn't the one who took it. The radish wanted it. Shuning shrugged and threw the pendant to Lone Moon, ignoring the radish's objections. Look for it. It. Lone Moon looked down at the radish in his hand. Didn't the Xian Yuan family master fight to the death with you, just like that? Shuning thought back to the corpse in the hall. Fighting to the death was a little difficult for the Xian Yuan family master. The radish used its own dandelion to exchange for it. They looked pretty happy. How can that be? He looked closely at the vegetation spirit in the radish's hand. Using his divine perception, he realized that there was no trace of any spiritual perception in the spirit plant. The vegetation spirit had withered long ago. Connecting the dots, he immediately understood why the Xian Yuan family had to snatch the radish. I see. He looked at the reluctant radish in his hand. This little thing must have sensed the aura of one of its kind. That's why it wanted to take the withered grass away. G. The radish squeezed out his hand and turned to hang back on Shenying's leg. But Shenying glared at it. Its leaves wilted instantly, and it retreated pitifully. But what does it want the withered grass for? To bury it? Lone Moon used his divine perception to scan the withered vegetation spirit. Apart from the residual spirit Qi, the medicinal value of the withered leaves was not even comparable to that of the dandelion. Could it be that it can revive this vegetation spirit? His eyes brightened. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. They were both vegetation spirits formed from spirit Qi. They were the same existence. It was normal that they could influence each other. As soon as he said this, Shun Ying and I Ching could not help but turn to look at the radish on the table. Gee! The radish's body tilted, its face blank. Vegetation spirit plants have always been very resilient. Who knows, it might really be able to revive them. Really? Shuning leaned closer curiously. Try reviving them. Gee! The radish responded. It raised the withered leaves on its head and looked at her. As if it understood what she said, the withered leaves stood up again. G. It cried out excitedly. Suddenly, the whole radish began to glow with a green light. This is vegetation Qi. Looks like it's really possible. Lone Moon was overjoyed. He stared closely at the radish on the table. This was the first time he had seen a revival skill. The light on the radish's body grew brighter and brighter. In a short while, it had already enveloped its small body. A horizontal line appeared on its white, fat body. The leaves on its head suddenly began to grow longer, spreading over its white, fat body. It rolled up the withered leaf and put it down. The leaves stirred a few times, and the withered vegetation spirit was neatly folded into a square shape. It moved closer to the horizontal line, and then, with an ah sound, it ate it. A moment later, it let out a familiar loud sound. Burp, Lone Moon, I Ching, Shunning, flips table. Damn it, so it's just for eating. Aren't you a vegetation spirit? You just need to absorb spirit Qi. Why do you need to eat withered grass? Big grass eating small grass. You're really something that the foodie Shun Ying picked up. Lone Moon suddenly had the urge to turn it into a pickle. Forget it. I'm full. Shun Ying sighed. Indeed, it was a useless vegetable. She was about to get up. Master. I Ching suddenly let out a cry. This radish. She turned around and saw that the burping radish suddenly glowed red. In an instant, it turned from a white radish to a red radish. Is this right? Oh no, it's going to transform. Lone Moon was shocked. He looked around and said, the spirit Qi here is too messy. The wood spirit Qi is too weak. It will affect its transformation. There's a forest in the east of the city. I Ching reminded. Let's go. Lone Moon immediately picked up the red radish on the table. The three of them summoned their spirit swords and turned to fly out. The shopkeeper at the door smiled and walked out quickly. 3 customers. Before he could finish speaking, the 3 of them had already disappeared into the horizon. You haven't paid your spirit stones? Chapter 66. It was nighttime. Shuning could not resist the invitation of Zhougong. Her eyelids closed inch by inch. Just as she was about to fall asleep, she suddenly opened them. She looked at the bright moonlight outside the window and sighed. She had no choice but to get up. She opened the window on the right and said to the figure outside, "Chef, how long do you intend to stand there?" I Ching was stunned. He immediately stood up straight and said seriously, "Master, don't worry. I will guard this place well. I will not let anyone come near and disturb Master." He did not believe that anyone would dare to snatch her from under his nose. Sigh, Little Red and the others have already officially entered the sect. They will not come here in the middle of the night. Master, people are sinister. We have to be prepared. He said seriously, "It was my mistake that caused Master to be kidnapped the second time. I will not allow myself to make a third mistake. But you can't stand outside my window every day. You have to wake up early to make breakfast tomorrow. Master, don't worry. I'm not tired." "I'm tired." Shun Ing sighed deeply again. This was the first time she realized that her chef was so stubborn. She climbed out of the window and pulled him to sit beside her. "Chef, it's so late. If you don't sleep and stand here, I won't be able to rest. Why don't I promise you that if someone really comes, I will shout for you? But once Master falls asleep, you won't wake up even if lightning strikes." "Air. Nonsense. What if some blind person kidnaps Master again? It's safer for me to stay here." Was she a child? How could she be kidnapped so easily? The more I Ching said, the more he felt the need. He became more determined. "Go rest, Master. I will not disturb your sleep." "You've already disturbed me." Shining looked at this stubborn person in front of her. She had a headache. After thinking for a while, she sighed and said helplessly, "I won't accept Little Red and the others as disciples." "All right." He turned back. "I won't accept them in the future, either," she added. Sure enough, his eyes lit up like the stars in the sky. "Really?" "Yes." She nodded. "Their cooking is not as good as yours. Can we go back to sleep now?" "Yes, Master." "No problem, Master." I Ching stood up abruptly and turned around to leave the courtyard happily. He looked as if he had hit the jackpot and disappeared at the door in a flash. Shunning, having a chef with such a strong ego, was also a problem. It seemed like he couldn't change his taste so easily in the future. Recently, the entire demon realm had been very busy. All the demons were busy helping the great immortal rebuild the rear hall that had mysteriously collapsed. Shunning was busy eating, while Lone Moon was busy teaching the new disciples. Originally, I Ching was also involved in teaching sorcery. However, he did not know what had happened to him recently. From the second day after these disciples entered the sect, he built a temporary kitchen next to Shun Ying's house and immersed himself in researching new dishes. No one could pull it out. Lone Moon had completely lost all hope in this sword immortal who was about to become a chef immortal. Yet, he could not let Shunning help him. Otherwise, this foodie would definitely bring out a new Oriental chef class. He could only grit his teeth and accept these people. On the first day of class, he carefully checked everyone's cultivation and sorcery. After checking, he was shocked. None of these 9 people's spirit roots were complete. Although it could be seen that they did have good qualities in the past, because of the multiple forceful bursts of spirit chi to nourish them, most of their foundations were destroyed. Moreover, the meridians in their bodies were messed up. Some were even poisoned. Not to mention cultivation, it was already a miracle that they could live until now. Fortunately, Invincible Sect did not have anything else. There were spirit herbs and spirit plants all over the mountains. It was only a matter of time to heal their injuries. However, he and I Ching were not good at concocting medicine. Their damaged foundations could not be repaired. In the future, it would be especially difficult for them to cultivate sorcery. They might not even be able to advance an inch. It was just right for them to become sword cultivators. Originally, these people were raised as human cauldrons from a young age. All they learned were een and soft sorcery. He also did not know much about other types of cultivators. If their foundations were still intact, he might not be able to teach them too much. They might as well take this opportunity to become sword cultivators. Sword cultivators were different from sorcery. They relied on techniques and understanding of sword intent. Therefore, even if their foundations were damaged, they might be able to go further on the path of sword cultivators. But compared to ordinary cultivators, or even sword cultivators, their lives were 100 times more difficult. Lone Moon looked at the group of delicate girls in front of him and hesitated. Supremacy, don't worry. We are not afraid of hardship. Knowing what he was worried about, Yu Hong took a step forward and said with a determined expression, "We have already experienced the toughest things in the world. What is there to be afraid of?" Lone Moon's brows relaxed. He glanced at the crowd again. He had underestimated these girls. To be able to climb out of such a hellish situation without giving up and stay true to their hearts, why would they be afraid of a little hardship? Good. From today onwards, you are sword cultivators of my invincible sect. Lone Moon waved his hand and immediately summoned several spirit swords. He placed them in front of everyone. You have to start from the simplest sword moves. Yes, everyone answered in unison. Instead, she suddenly turned and walked back to the 9 of them. Well, I said something wrong yesterday. The 9 of them were taken aback and raised their heads. Our invincible sect doesn't have many friends anyway. Don't worry about friendship first. Her eyes turned cold as she said word by word. So, you don't have to give me any face. Just kill him. You are indeed not fairies, but you could be everyone's nightmare. And while later, yes. Sect leader. 9's fighting spirit was burning fiercely. Ching. Master is right. Lone Moon. Ha, brainless fan. Every sect competition was the liveliest event in the Upper Azure world. The competition actually only lasted for 3 days. Today was the preliminary round, mainly to select the top 50 disciples of each cultivation level. The format of the competition was simple. Each cultivation level was divided into a group of 100 people. The last one standing would advance. Because it was the first day, all the sects had come to watch the competition. A high-floating platform was filled with experts from all the sections. The people on the highest level were from the 4 big families. Although most of the top 3 disciples were from the aristocratic families, this competition concerned the reputation of the aristocratic families. The patriarchs of the aristocratic families were all present, accompanied by traveling immortals. There are many more sects participating in this competition than in previous years. Yu Haihung, the patriarch of the Yu family, frowned as he looked at the crowd below. Of course, I heard that many new sects have been established these few years. Yifeng, the patriarch of the Yi family, touched the 10th level demon beast lying beside him and smiled. Fortunately, Tian City is big enough. Even if there were twice as many people, it would not be a problem. You are indeed the wealthy Yin family. Now why don't I see the patriarch of the Yin family? Yifeng looked around and realized that the host, the Yin family, was not here. Perhaps he has gone to make arrangements for the competition. With so many sects here this time, he must be very busy. The frown on Yu Haiyan's face deepened. He swept a disdainful glance at the experts from the various sects seated below him. He didn't seem to have any misgivings at all. The competition is getting worse with each passing year. All kinds of shabby sects dare to participate. Even the Yin family doesn't restrict the number of participating sections. Yifeng laughed dryly and did not reply. He had heard that the patriarch of the Yu family was arrogant and never paid attention to the occasion when he spoke. Yu Haihung, however, thought that Yifeng was tacitly agreeing. His gaze became even more contemptuous. Suddenly, he noticed something and snorted coldly. Look over there. There are even mortals here. What do they think they are? Little Missy, he bullied me. Scram. Vegetable dishes had no right to speak. Woo-woo. It's 1,000 leaves vegetation spirit? Xian Yuan stared at Radish in shock. It had transformed so quickly. The Xian Yuan family had worked hard for tens of thousands of years, but they still couldn't make the vegetation spirit in their family take human form. They even raised it for a while before it died. The way the 2 of them looked at Radish became more and more passionate. Radish hid behind Shining and threatened them angrily. Pooey, get lost, ugly thing. Don't even think about coveting my pure body. The two of them were the mouths of spirit monsters that transform from plants, all so poisonous. Cough, great immortal. Xian Yuanyu retracted his gaze and scanned the crowd. He turned to Shening and said, "Congratulations to all the disciples of your sect for entering the second round of the competition. You are indeed the disciples of great immortal. All of you are outstanding." Of course. Before Shening could reply, Radish answered proudly, "All the big sisters in our family are very powerful." In this year, Radish had become very familiar with everyone. After all, they were the ones who watered it. In its heart, it had a ranking. Shening was first, it was second, and the other little missy were third. Its natural enemy was I Ching, the chef who often cut carrots. As for Lomun, Pui, of course the disciples of great immortal are powerful. Xian Yuanyu nodded repeatedly. He looked at the crowd again and continued, "But when I looked at your spirit bones, it seems like your foundation is damaged. It seems to be an old problem. Forgive me for being blunt, but this kind of damage should be healed as soon as possible. Otherwise, it will affect your future cultivation. You have a way?" Lone Moon looked at him in surprise. Xian Yuanyu nodded. "My Xian Yuan family has always been good at alchemy. I have some achievements in the field of alchemy. Their condition is actually not a big deal. They only need an 8th grade vitality pill to recover. Their damaged appearance can also be recovered. I just happened to refine a batch of vitality pills a few days ago. I can give it to your sect." Everyone looked delighted. Xian Yuanyu immediately took out a palm-sized bottle and handed it to Lone Moon. He added, "They have not formed their nascent souls. It's better to repair their foundation sooner rather than later." Lone Moon took the pill and his expression darkened. He asked, "How many spirit stones does this cost?" After all, Xian Yuanyu had caused trouble at his place. He could not take his things for free. "No need, no need." Xian Yuanyu hurriedly shook his head and said sincerely, "I just want to build a good relationship with your sect. I have no other intentions. I have no request." Even if he had a request, he would not dare to accept it. Moreover, he was one of the 4 big families. As a result, the 4 names of Invincible sect were especially obvious. He could even feel that on the way back to the courtyard, the other sects were looking at them differently. Some were fearful, some were envious, and some were shocked. But they did not look down on them like before. Lone Moon's goal of advertising had been achieved. He could almost see the sea of people queuing in front of him the next time he went to Upper Azure Town to recruit disciples. At the thought of this, he could not contain his excitement. This time, he had to watch over the new disciples and prevent any possibility of contact with Shening. This time, he was going to nurture a group of pure sword cultivators. After returning to the courtyard, Lone Moon praised the 9 people one by one, especially the 4 who had advanced. He also comforted their nervous hearts for the upcoming finals. He had thought that they would at least be excited, but they did not respond to his praise at all. They only looked at Shening as if they were expecting something. Even a certain someone who had a screw loose could feel his concentration. She was stunned for a moment, and after a while, she turned her head and complimented him. "Not bad, keep it up." "Yes, Sect Master." 9 only then did they respond loudly, as if their acupoints had been unlocked. Everyone immediately burst into laughter. "Lo Moon, son of a B****, Xian Yuanyu requests to see Great Immortal Shun. I wonder if it is convenient for Great Immortal?" A familiar voice suddenly came from outside the door. Before Shening could respond, Radish rushed out with a long face. He glared angrily at the newcomer and said, "What are you doing here? Do you want to ravage my body again?" The corner of Xian Yuanyu's mouth twitched. He seemed to have thought of something and felt a mouthful of blood welling up. Looking at Shening, who came out behind him, he had no choice but to swallow it down. Ha! He felt that after what happened last night, he had doubts about his Tao of pill cultivation. He could no longer look directly at the herbs for refining pills. Chapter 72. Vegetarian Patriarch, what's the matter? Shening asked. Straight face. What the hell was Vegetarian Patriarch? It felt like the way Great Immortal addressed him was constantly changing. Shun. Great immortal Shun. He took a step forward and calmed himself down before remembering his purpose. I heard that 4 disciples of Invincible Sect have entered the finals. I'm here to congratulate your sect. You're too kind, Patriarch. Lone Moon took a step forward and smiled. Didn't the Xian Yuan family also have 5 disciples in the finals? We'd like to congratulate you as well, Patriarch. How can my disciples compare to great immortals' disciples? Xian Yunyu smiled even more politely and began to flatter each other. He then took out a bottle of elixirs and handed it over. By the way, this is a spirit condensation elixir used to nourish spirit chi. It's not a big elixir, but it will be more effective when used with the previous bottle of vitality elixir. It's suitable for your disciples. Take it as a congratulation to your sect for entering the finals. Lone Moon looked at the bottle and found that it was indeed a 5th-grade pill. He did not reject it and accepted the goodwill. Thank you, Patriarch Xian Yuan. If you need any rare herbs in the future, feel free to come to Invincible Sect. We'll do our best. With that said, he looked at the arrogant Radish. Xian Yuanyu looked over as well. Everyone else subconsciously turned to look at Radish. What? You want me to bloom? An image flashed across their minds. Everyone's mouths twitched. The situation was extremely awkward. What parent? You're looking for me for something, right? Shuning spoke up, breaking the strange atmosphere. Xian Yuanyu paused. Indeed, he was silent for a while, as if he did not know what to say. After a while, he said, "It's like this. The patriarch of the Yin family is curious about Great Immortal. He heard that Great Immortal was here, so he asked me to come and see if I could meet you." The Yin family? Shuning paused. The Yin family is the organizer of this competition. Thinking of this, Xian Yuanyu could not help but grit his teeth and complain about the sly old foxes of the Yin family. The Xian Yuan family was one of the 4 aristocratic families. Their every move was watched by all the sects in the Upper Azure world. It was no secret that he had been overly friendly to Shan Ying these 2 days. Presumably, the 4 great families were now guessing her identity. The Yin family was no exception, but he hadn't expected that unlike the other 2 families, Yin Feng would directly seek him out and ask for an introduction. It was obvious that no matter who the other party was, they had to get to know him first. The Yin family was indeed the biggest profiteer in the Upper Azure world. They were faster and more decisive than others. Sect Master. Siyu sniffled. For a moment, it was as if she had found someone to rely on. Her aura dissipated. In the blink of an eye, she became that delicate and adorable girl again. But my bell. It's all right. It's broken, so be it. Shining turned and took out a piece of candy from her pocket. As if coaxing a child, she said, "Do you want candy? Sect Master, you're giving it to me?" Siyu stopped crying. Her face was full of disbelief. Then, "Can you give me a new bell?" "Sure. I'll get Chef to make one when we get back." "Thank you, Sect Master." The 2 of them spoke as they walked out of the arena. Everyone, what kind of freaking sect was this? "Father Nyo, let's go eat at the celebration banquet." Shining waved at the despairing man in the room. "Eat your sister." Lone Moon clenched the cup in his hand and crushed it into pieces. He exploded in anger. What's there to celebrate? Siyu became a champion of the Golden Core stage in this year's sect competition. The name of Invincible Sect spread throughout the entire Upper Azure world. But Lone Moon was not happy at all. He even wanted to curse at them. Because of Siyu's battle, the entire Upper Azure world knew that everyone in Invincible Sect was a body cultivator. Not many people liked to cultivate in the first place. With this wave of publicity, it was completely blocked. Others wanted to join Invincible Sect. After all, there were easier ways to cultivate. No one would want to become a body cultivator who could easily be struck to death by lightning. Originally, when he brought the 9 girls to participate in the competition, he had instructed them to only use the sword techniques they had learned in battle. First, it was because they were indeed proficient in sword techniques. Second, it was to hide their identity as body cultivators. Even if people felt that their bodies were stronger than the average person's, they would at most think that they were sword cultivators. In the end, Who the hell knew that there was a second form for body cultivators? Once they fought, all their muscles would burst out and they would turn into a metal Barbie. With AF Asterisk King messing with him, he felt that the heavens were starting to dislike him more and more. For all, MMP,